teacher.
Hello, Luis. Morning. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Good.
¿Cómo está, teacher?
Bien. Muy bien.
No podía subir nada. ¿Gusta?
No, gracias.
Ah,
Aprovecho. Sí.
no podía subir nada ayer de lo del...
Pues ya está, ¿no?
Ajá, pues
Ah.
ya después lo volví a poner.
Ah,
No
ok.
aparecía mi reflexión y lo volví a subir. No sé si
Sí, ya,
salga
ya.
dos
Déjeme.
veces
Ah, ok. Creo que fue por eso. Pero bueno, ya.
Sí
Pero
aparece
ya.
dos veces.
Creo que sí.
Porque lo regresé, o sea, volví a actualizar la página y nomás salía el de Hub, no salía el mío. Dije, no, después va a decir que no lo
Creo
subí
que
y
sí.
lo volví a
Sí,
poner. Entonces dije,
Pero bueno, ya. El detalle es que ya está. Sí, está dos veces, pero bueno, está bien.
ah,
Ya. Ok. Bueno, primero no sé si tengas algunas preguntas primero para comenzar.
Bueno, yo
Sí,
cuando fui con todos los tutores, me dijeron que tenía que ponerme a pensar en qué actividad específicamente, utilizando la tecnología,
Ajá.
puede ayudar al maestro para utilizar implicit grammar.
Ajá.
Pero yo aquí nada más le puse technology en general. Entonces no sé si tendría que poner exactamente la actividad o qué tipo de actividades utilizando technology
Okay.
o...
Bueno, vamos a ver. Aquí dice, I wish to learn more about the influence of technology in adult learners who learn grammar implicitly because I want to find out. Okay, let's focus first on the question. Because I want to find out how technology helps learners acquire grammar implicitly. That's uno. Another one, because I also want to find out how they can get it easy as possible and why students main problems are related to English grammar. Now, I think let's focus first on this question, on this part first. Okay, then we can kind of look at the other aspects of this handout. So, tell me again, like this first one, how technology helps learners acquire grammar. This means we need to measure learning. Right? Because for us to know if it helps learners acquire grammar, we need to say, did they learn grammar or not? All right. My suggestion would be not to focus on learning. Okay? So let's put that off to the side and let's look at this one. How they can get it easy as possible. To me, that sounds also like what? Kind of like learning. Did they get it easy? Did they learn it or not? Was it easy for them to learn or not?
So how can I do it or not? Or focus on teaching?
Okay, so let's put that one aside. Let's look at the next one. Why the students' main problems related? See why?
Because the main problem of my students was grammar. Like they usually get frustrated because of the structures that they need to follow. For example, they know certain vocabulary, but they don't know how to express or use that vocabulary in a phrase.
All right. When you say that they get frustrated, how do you know they are frustrated? What do they do?
Their faces, and then they say, I don't know how to use it. I know that you can, for example, this is desk, pero como digo, yo tengo un desk.
Okay.
Eso es lo que dice, ¿cómo tengo que seguir? Es que al menos ellos lo veían como muy estructuralmente. Así que, ¿cómo voy a decir, yo tengo un escritorio, yo soy tal? Entonces tenían vocabulario, porque yo les daba el vocabulario.
So one thing, if I understand you correctly, then one thing that you want to investigate is, because I want to find out how grammar can be taught implicitly so students feel less frustrated.
Yes.
That's an option. How can teachers teach grammar implicitly so that students feel less frustrated? Now, here's the thing. We need to connect, because what you're telling me now is based on your own class. And I know this too because we had applied linguistics last semester where you did your own research on your own class, you're on your own teaching practice. But now this semester is a little bit different because now we have to focus on you observing someone else.
Yes.
So we need to take this idea that you have, that you want to focus on, and figure out, okay, how can I adapt it or use it, focusing on someone else. Okay? And I tell you this because and maybe, maybe it's common that students feel frustrated, right? But you need to find classes where students, to a degree, are frustrated or they're not frustrated. They're able to express themselves to say, I'm frustrated or I'm not frustrated. All right? So if here, and you need to find other teachers who are teaching grammar implicitly. Right? All right. So, we need to think of a question because I want to find out how teachers teach grammar implicitly so that students are not frustrated or they're motivated to learn. Or they're motivated to learn, or they enjoy their class, their English classes. They enjoy or they feel that they.
But how can they know that they enjoy?
Well, you're going to research. Well, you're going to do a research, and how can you find out? You can ask them, interviews, right, based on an example or two, or some sort of class where the teacher's teaching implicit grammar. You can observe that and ask the students, how do you feel? Do you like when the teacher, this activity where you did this? Yes, I like it because of this and this, and they're giving you this information through an interview. That's one option.
Actually, the teacher Carla told me that maybe I can tell the teacher, okay, do whatever you do your class in the same way you usually do it, and explain one topic, whatever, and then I provide the teacher I don't know, maybe an activity or something that that teaches them the same topic, but after the teacher gave the first class, like do an exam or something, and then after the other one, another one of the same topic, and compare if they understood better the topic with the second one or the first one.
Okay, yeah. So you're asking about an intervention, if you can do an intervention. Okay, and so you want, yeah, you can do that. That's one option, is doing an intervention. Now, there's a couple of extra considerations that you have to focus on whenever you do an intervention. Okay, so I'm going to give you my suggestion. You're going to decide whether or not you want to do an intervention or not. Okay, let's say you want to do an intervention. You need to reflect and find out, how you're going to talk to the teacher about doing the intervention. Okay, you have an intervention in your mind, and so you're going to be talking to this teacher and asking them to do something maybe that they haven't done, maybe, or maybe they have done, but it could be what you're thinking, what you want, or maybe it's some other variation. I mean, these are all possibilities, right? So when you do that, just know that there's that extra consideration, right? First, is the teacher going to be willing to do what you want them to do? That's one. Two, let's say that they're willing. Okay, no problem, I'll do it, Luis. What do you want me to do? And you explain what they want to do, but they don't do it exactly like you need it for your research, or maybe it's a little bit different, and that could be a bad thing, or it could, I'm not sure. It could be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. I don't know. But you have a specific purpose of your research. So just know, when you have someone else doing something that you want to do, that it may help you, or it may not help you, or it could help you, but maybe not as much as you would like to. Okay, these are all possibilities. So I just want you to think about these possibilities whenever you're planning all of this, trying to think, am I going to do an intervention or not? Okay, well, if I do, who do I know? Am I going to use somebody I know? or how am I going to find teachers? How am I going to ask them to do something that I'm not doing? Okay, so because there's a lot of different scenarios. You could go to a school that says, this school says, all the teachers in the school have to teach this way. And you want to propose another way, they may say, you can't do that. It's school policy that, that's another possibility. So just think about, those things. I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm not saying it's not a good option. Okay, it could be it could be a very good option, but that there are these other considerations that you need to really plan for and consider. Okay, now another option. So that's the intervention.
In your opinion, what?
Okay, what
should I do?
So that's option 1.
Yes.
All right. Option 2 is not to do an intervention, and you find teachers who are more or less doing already what you want to research.
Okay.
So you're on option 2. You're not going to be doing an intervention. You're not going to be saying, "Hey, can you do this? I'm researching this. Can you do this?" You're just observing, because you already know that they're already doing something that you want to research, and maybe they've done it many times, or maybe not. You can find that out, but they're already naturally doing what you want to research. Now, how are you going to know that? One way is to first, if you don't know the teacher, do some sort of survey to ask teachers questions. How do you feel about teaching grammar? Okay. How often do you teach grammar? How do you teach it? Why do you teach it? What materials do you use? Just you come up with an instrument that you apply to X amount of teachers, and from there you decide, okay, I have 2 teachers or 3 teachers that are doing just exactly what I am wanting to research. And then you talk to those 2 or 3 teachers and start talking about, okay, can I observe a class? Can I observe a day where you're going to be focusing on grammar teaching? And maybe you don't mention implicit grammar. You just say grammar teaching. Or you talk with the teacher and kind of get an idea about when you can observe, because you want to observe enough to find out what they're doing in class, but without you telling them, do this. Okay? You don't want them to know so much about exactly what you're observing. You just want them to just teach as normal as possible, being that you're going to be observing them, but you're not going to be saying, okay, I'm observing this, and this, so I want you to do this to see how. No, you just want them to teach more or less as natural as possible. So that's another option. Okay, so if you want my advice, if you can find teachers who are already teaching, in this case, implicit grammar, if you can find those teachers, I think it would be interesting and perhaps easier to focus on those teachers, right, that you can find that are teaching implicit grammar.
But how can I present the results, for example? Because if I don't compare like the results with another people, how can I say these are better results, or my results are this? How can I present it?
All right. Because you're doing a qualitative research, all right, we're going to try to work out and discuss today and next week and the next month, we're going to be trying to decide how you're going to be designing all of this, all right? And I'm going to give you some suggestions and things that could happen, but there are probably going to be things that we can't predict 100% because this is a qualitative research. We're not going to do a control class. We're not going to do like like an experimental study on this research. This is going to be a type of like a phenomenology type of research where you are just observing what's happening already in the classroom. Okay, now, when you observe, all right, a class, let's say you choose 2 teachers, and both of the teachers say that they teach implicit grammar. An example, they teach implicit grammar using certain performance tasks. Maybe they use task-based learning, okay, to teach implicit grammar. So task-based learning, implicit grammar. 2 teachers say that they do that. And let's assume in your literature review, you talk about task-based learning and you talk about implicit grammar. Okay. You take those two teachers and you observe them. You observe examples of task-based learning, teaching implicit grammar, okay? And you basically you can compare those two teachers, because even though it's task-based, okay, it's going to be two totally different maybe examples of task-based learning and how they are teaching implicit grammar. Maybe they use different strategies to teach the implicit grammar. So you can compare those two classes. You can see how the students react, that is, observe their behavior in class, and even interview the students to see how they feel about that activity and see how they do they feel frustrated or not? Do they look frustrated or not? Okay, and you observe as much as you can and gather data from the students and from the teacher from those two groups that say they are doing task-based learning, teaching implicit grammar through task-based learning, right? You're looking for commonalities. When you look for those teachers and you do that survey, you're looking for 2 or 3 teachers that share some commonality. In this case, implicit grammar, and hopefully something else. Implicit grammar to teach speaking. I don't know. Implicit grammar to interact, for the students can interact amongst themselves in pairs, right? So you're trying to find as many commonalities between 2 or 3 teachers that you can say, okay, I'm going to focus on these 2 or 3 teachers because they have a lot in common. They like to do implicit grammar. They like task-based learning. They like to use video, or whatever other aspect that relates to your literature review. So based on that survey, you choose your participants, and then you start looking at those the specifics of your analysis, looking at implicit grammar, thinking about what the teacher does, what the student does, and how the students feel, how they react, how they feel about doing those types of activities or those techniques or those materials. Okay, I'm throwing out a lot of different things because you have to limit as much as possible those things that you're going to examine. And on the second page, what I'm referring to, what has to be very clear for you, is this step 2. I wish to examine what? And we have some ideas here, but you have to be very specific. I wish to examine teacher techniques for teaching implicit grammar. That could be one. I want to examine the students' attitudes of using those materials to teach implicit grammar. I want to know how they feel about doing that. Do they like it? Do they get frustrated? Do they enjoy it?
So, for example, in this case, it says behaviors, opinions, and knowledge. Knowledge is not going to be.
Yeah. So I would say I wish to examine, and and you maybe have 3 examples, but very specific. I wish to examine teacher behaviors or techniques related to implicit grammar. Or it could be, I wish to examine materials or authentic materials teachers use to teach implicit grammar. Or I wish to examine the use of the board when teaching implicit grammar. Or I wish to observe the discourse between the teacher and the students when teaching implicit grammar. So these are all examples, right? And I'm throwing out all these examples not to confuse you, but to say, okay, we need to be here. We need to be more specific still, and just use stuff that you found, information that you found in your literature review. If you have, and try to use as much of that as you can. But we need to have something that you can measure. That's the big deal. I mean, this is where I'm going. All this stuff here has to be measurable and doable, and that's where we need to be, right? And if there are some of these things that maybe change a little bit, it's okay. But we still need to be, like, if you say instead of attitudes, we say reactions, or instead of attitudes, we say opinions, and that's after you have all of this data. That's not a big deal. But we need to be very specific here so it's very clear what you're going to measure. When you go in and observe, what are you going to observe? Okay, and so these are all things that you need to come up with and decide on here what you want to examine. Now the unit of analysis we can decide now, but it could also change. For example, let's say we say the unit of analysis is our groups, individual groups. The unit of analysis is a group, and you choose 3 groups, and you compare those 3 groups. The unit of analysis is that group, that is students, the group of students and teacher. So group 1, group 2, group 3. The unit of analysis are those individual groups. Does that make sense? All right. Let's say that you do your survey and you can't find 3 teachers. You only find one teacher that you feel is teaching the implicit grammar. Okay, we do a case study on that one teacher. And we just change the focus. Maybe we examine a few more things here, or maybe we examine more deeply that one group. You don't have to compare and contrast, okay? It's not necessary. I mean, it's not a requirement. If you want to, that's fine. But let's say you choose one group. You do an analysis, maybe a discourse analysis, and figure out what the teacher says and what the students say, and you do a big analysis over this. Then you can compare your results with the experts, right? So you're always going to be comparing your results to the experts, regardless. Okay, so it's not, don't think that you absolutely have to do compare and contrast between 2 groups or 3 groups. Certainly, that's a possibility. Okay, but there's some uncertainties here. I mean, maybe for sure you can find these groups. Hopefully you can. But I mean, it happens. Sometimes you do this survey and you just don't get the results that you needed. Sometimes you have to adjust and adapt. Okay, but
what happens if, for example, if I find, I don't know, 2 or 3 teachers who teach implicit grammar, but they don't use technology, so I have to adjust that and say.
Well, yeah, okay. So the survey that you do, it has to be well enough. Okay, it has to be designed such that it tells you certain things. So if you, in your literature review, you have technology, you have implicit grammar, and when I say technology, let's say the use of video. So use of video and implicit grammar. Your instrument has to include, do you teach with technology? How do you teach implicit grammar? It has to be designed so the teachers, the respondents, tell you whether yes they use technology and no they don't, and if they do, how. It has to tell you that, so that when you get the results, okay, I don't know, these 2 teachers say that they use technology. So then you start talking to them and you say, okay, yeah, I see that you mentioned that you use technology to teach implicit grammar. Can I observe a week? Can I observe you for next week? Okay, so let's say they say, okay, no problem, Luis, come by, you can visit and observe for 1 week. So you go on Monday, and let's say the worst case scenario, you don't see any evidence of technology or implicit grammar. So okay, you go back on Tuesday, and let's say same, you don't see anything, you don't get any information that you need for your research. Then maybe you have an interview. So after Tuesday, you say, hey, do you mind if we have just a quick interview, or at least talk to the teacher briefly, and ask them, okay, I see that you've been doing this in class. Are there any plans of you using technology? And then you start leading, and okay, yeah, tomorrow we're going to be doing technology. Okay, then or maybe they say, well, probably next week I'll be doing something in the computer lab or something. Okay, can I observe them? Ya desde ahí tú entonces estás como adaptando, ¿verdad? En este caso las observaciones. So this is what, and we'll talk more about this when we get closer to data collection, but this is what I mean by you have to be kind of flexible. There's no way that we can say, okay, this is exactly what you're going to do every day, and this will be what you need. There's always some uncertainty, and this is what qualitative research is about, because you don't have the control of the whole context. You're just observing a more or less authentic context in a sense. Okay, so you're kind of up to them, and so you have to be flexible, but you have to take action when you need to say, okay, all right, maybe ask and try to turn it into an opportunity. So after 2 days, on Tuesday, you say, oh, I don't have any information, I'm not getting anything helpful. Okay, problem. Okay, now let's turn that into a positive and say, okay, can I have an interview with you? So maybe you just get an extra interview on Tuesday, and you plan an interview, a regular interview, and maybe you start talking about teaching. As you can say, okay, I see that you're doing this. Why are you doing this? Okay, have you ever done this with teaching grammar this way? Ya estás hablando así como dirigiendo la conversación a más a implicit grammar. Hasta al final estás preguntando, ¿cuándo es la próxima clase donde vas a utilizar tecnología o hacer de, no sé, de implicit grammar? Algo así. Y ellos van a decir, no, pues este viernes, no sé qué. Ya desde ahí puedes programar tu tiempo para que no estás gastando tanto tiempo observando una clase que no puedes, que no va a servir. So, yeah, I'm throwing out a lot of different options here. You need to, with the idea that you decide, which direction, intervention or no intervention. If it's an intervention, all those aspects, just be thinking about how you're going to, control that, how you're going to take care of those extra variables, right? About whether or not the teacher's going to be or can implement what you need, etc. If you're not going to do an intervention, thinking about this the survey that you're going to apply, trying to find the teachers. Okay, and maybe it's a survey that you send out to 2 or 3 schools, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 teachers. And with the idea that you use it as a filter, you're choosing, you're not going to focus on 20 or 30 teachers. But it's the first survey for you to choose your participants. So all the other data that you have from the surveys, you're not going to use. The only thing you would use would be the information from those 2 or 3 or 4 teachers that you decide to do your study on. That's if you want to do a qualitative research study, right? That's what we're talking about today, is doing a qualitative research study. A quantitative research study is totally different. Mm-hmm. That would be you could do a survey, send out to 120 to 150 teachers, do an elaborate survey and do an analysis. Y eso es otra cosa. So, my suggestion would be I don't know if you have any primary research articles that you can share with me today, but you need to find some primary research articles that relate a lot to what you want to do, and figure out what you can do and what ideas and information, maybe instruments that you can use from those other research that you can apply to your own research.
So in that case, for example, if I find that an author says that implicit grammar helps these kind of people in this way, I can check, for example, the teachers who.
Yeah, just be careful when you say help. Like but yeah, your idea is correct. Like, let's say you find information where they say implicit grammar motivates students. Okay, it motivates students because and it shows that it helps their learning. Okay, now you're not going to focus on helps their learning, but you can say, all right, I'm going to use that same, and let's say they use technology. Maybe they mention using wikis motivates teaching, helping students learn grammar implicitly through writing. Okay, maybe you can focus on the use of a wiki, okay, and find out how students feel about using wikis, and how teachers correct, how they correct students implicitly through wikis, right? And you just got that idea from a wiki from reading about somebody else. You had never thought about using a wiki before. You read an article, somebody else investigated using wikis, indirect feedback, motivating students, todo eso, and you're getting ideas from that research. I mean, I can't express enough the importance, how much it will help you finding 2 or 3 really good articles that you say, you know what, I want to do the same thing. They're doing just about exactly what I'm wanting to do. And I'm going to use these research questions. I'm going to invest the same problem that this person is. I'm going to use a questionnaire or adapt a questionnaire that this person used. Using different aspects of different research. Adapting, molding it to your own context. That's perfectly fine. That's what I would recommend that you do. That you're not starting from zero. In fact, you really can't start from zero. The idea with this type of research is that you're adding to the literature. These people said this, now what's your contribution? How are you going to contribute, right? And maybe you find exactly the same results as they did. That's fine. Maybe it's completely different. That's fine. You're adding to the literature. Right? But try to find these articles. We need to bring them in, we can sit down, look at these, and say, okay, what helps you? What can you use? What not? If you have problems figuring out what to use or where to find it. But that's something you need to do now, this week.
Mm-hmm.
So that this worksheet is completely clear in your mind. Okay? That doesn't mean that part of it could change slightly, but it needs to be clear. It needs to be say, okay, this is a plan, I get it. These are my research questions. Okay? My research questions coming from here. Okay, so I know my research questions. I know why I'm doing this, the significance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's very clear. I know exactly what I'm going to examine, how I'm going to measure it. Maybe even some instruments that I might use. It's very clear to me what I'm going to do here. I know exactly what my unit of analysis is, and I know, the research design. Am I doing a case study? Is it phenomenology? Is it something else? But this in your mind has to be clear for this week. Okay, and finding other research articles will help you get there. Okay.
Mm-hmm. All
right. So, take that into consideration, and if I don't want to tell you exactly like what would be the best way, because in fact I need to see too your literature review. I want you to bring in some articles that we talk about. I want to hear from you, like because it's very important that you do what you are interested in and that it's significant. So I don't want to talk you into doing something that is not really what you want to do. All right. So what I'm trying to do today is give you a lot of different options. It may sound confusing at first because, well, what do I do, this or this or this? I mean, there's many different ways. To narrow it down, look at your literature review. Let's use as much as possible from what you already have in your literature review, and try to focus on what you want to research for the semester. Yeah. And if you can upload, this week your literature review, and that'll help, and we can start, narrowing down your topic and start looking about how you want to order or organize your literature review. Because once we have this, then we look at your literature review and figure out how we want to organize it. To make sure that it's well organized, that there's a logic. And I created a video, and if you look on the first page here, I am asking that all of you take a look at the argument. If you go into modules for week 2, here, developing an argument. Take a look at this page. Because once you have your brainstorming handout completed and it's clear in your mind, this is the next step. How to organize your literature review. And we're going to organize your literature review around an argument. How do we order our ideas that are logical, that make sense? Because that's the next step. Yeah? And maybe you have your literature review, maybe you have most of your literature review, but we want to look at it again very critically and look at, okay, is it organized? And hopefully it is. If it's organized, then you're good to go. But we want to make sure that you're organizing it around your thesis statement, research questions in an orderly fashion. Okay, so there's some information here that I'd like for you to look at. There's a long video here for how to build an academic argument, but it's worth the time to watch the entire video and understand what they talk about, because this is exactly what we need to be thinking about after we do this, after you do this. Okay. So let's start thinking about this. If you are still stumped or not sure, having doubts, see me later this week, because this has to be clear within a couple of days. For you, this all has to be clear in your minds. Write it out, write it down, make it very clear. Bring this back next week or later this week, right? But the idea is that this has to be very clear for you, and because this is the direction for your research. And this is one of the hardest things to do, this thing right here, these 2 pages. But if you get this right now, everything else is very smooth. I mean, it's very clear what you need to do. If we don't get this right, then we're going to be like varying here, and we're going to be kind of like hit and miss, right? And it's much harder to work that way. So really just sit down and spend a lot of time thinking about this, right? And just come back. If you're not sure after a couple of days, you're still not sure about what to do, come back and let's talk about it again. Don't spend a whole week not knowing what to do with this. Think about it and see me or send me a question if you need some assistance before next week. Because next week I want to talk more about this, the organization. I want to say, okay, this is what you want to do, fine. This is how you might want to organize your work, your literature review.
Okay, so do I have to get...
This is yours.
Okay.
You take this, and this, where all of our sessions that we do here are recorded. So go back, listen to it, right? Start doing some more reading if possible, looking at your literature review, and try to finish completing that. So that you know very clearly, like you can kind of envision the research, like you know what you're going to do, type of thing.
And where can I find the recording?
Okay, the recordings, if you go to the main page and go to discussions. Now in discussions, I have this section pinned discussions, so hopefully this is how it appears when you go into it. It's called Thesis Statement Tutoring Sessions. So if you go and open this up, the latest video will always appear here, but there's a playlist, and right now there are only 3 videos. But you'll be able to access all the videos from here. You can also click on this link, and it'll take you to YouTube, which gives you another view, and it'll have all the videos that we have here, and you can find, and I'll put your names for each of your sessions, so you can go in and listen to our conversation here for the whole semester. Every week, all of these videos will be located here. Okay, and you can listen, obviously to yours. You can listen to any of them here, but what I'm going to be trying to do each week is doing like some sort of a roundup, kind of a summary for everybody that you should listen to, that I think will be helpful. There's an introduction here, right? So, take a look at and listen to the videos that you think are helpful, and they will all be found here or in Canvas under discussions.
Okay.
Alrighty. So, any questions, concerns, doubts?
No. I just know, or I just believe that I have to find a research.
Ujú.
Eso es como lo principal ya de ella. Como que
Ok.
es más seguro, no sé, a lo mejor como que creo que es la mejor opción.
Ajá.
Entonces,
Yo pienso que ahorita no te preocupes tanto de intervención o no, si vas a hacer uno o no.
ujú.
Está bien que estás pensando, pero antes de las otras investigaciones y ver qué puedes hacer tú, así en tu caso, qué puedes examinar y relacionado a los otros estudios, lo que han hecho
Es
ellos.
que de lo que yo encontré el semestre pasado, yo no encontré de adultos. La mayoría era que de alumnos de primaria, de sexto grado,
Ah,
o
ok.
cosas así. Entonces eran más con niños que con
Y no,
adultos.
y no quieres, porque también puedes enfocar en los
Sí,
niños.
o sea, no hay ningún problema, pero o sea, yo por retomarlo del semestre pasado, porque ese era como el problema que tenía,
Ajá.
por eso dije, a mí me gustaría con adultos, pero si encontrara, por ejemplo, más de
Sí,
niños.
en este caso mis sugerencias tratan a escoger uno u otro, es decir, niños, bueno, no sé de qué edad, pero bueno,
Bueno, eran
niños.
alumnos de sexto grado, por lo que yo encontré. Que decía
Ajá.
que.
Porque si todo tu literature vienen para niños, pues creo que tienes que enfocar a niños en tu
Sí.
investigación para que no tener así mucha división entre los participantes. Este, pero es muy factible, de hecho,
Así
de
que.
hecho yo pienso que sería más fácil encontrar ejemplos de implicit grammar para los niños de los
Para
adultos, pienso yo.
Y fue lo que más encontré el semestre pasado.
Ajá, entonces tal vez pensando en ok, voy a enfocar en, no sé, niños de hasta sexto grado, y ya, sigue esto con todo lo demás, como las preguntas de investigación y todo eso.
Pues voy a buscar
Pero si
ahora.
es de algo de tecnología, ese es un detalle que tienes que pensar buscando maestros que están utilizando, o escuelas que están utilizando tecnologías.
Sí, porque generalmente en las públicas, por lo menos, pues al menos ya platicando con algunos compañeros, dicen que ni saben utilizar lo que
O
tienen.
privadas, busca. Y hay que ver qué tipo de tecnologías estás incluyendo en tu lit review contra lo que vas a buscar o encontrar aquí, que está más o menos relacionado. Para que no estás hablando mucho de tecnologías que no tienen nada que ver con
Por lo que tú
tu
estás
investigación.
observando. Ujú.
Sí, entonces también esa es otra consideración. Piensas en todo tu lit review en relación
Ah, mira.
a tu propio contexto,
Ujú.
a ver qué es factible o no. Sí.
Ujú. Muy bien.
All right. All right.
Ok.
So have a good week, and let me know if you have any questions this week. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.
Ok.
Okay.
Ujú.
All
Thank you,
right. See you,
teacher.
Luis.
See you,
Bye.
bye.